Welcome everybody. I'm Evgeny, the founder of SimpleX Chat. As promised, we will talk about different things, but I'll start from what is SimpleX Chat and why we built it. So SimpleX Chat is probably the only platform, or at least the first one, that works without any kind of user identities. And the question we usually hear is how you can even deliver messages if users don't have identity on the network. The classic network design is to assign identifiers to some users, and that's how messages are being delivered. And we decided to do it differently. We assigned identifiers to connections between users, and that makes it much more private because these connections can be temporary and they don't identify the users, and you can't even see how many users on the network. And obviously the design is a bit more complex. That's how network looks. There are multiple relays. In each conversation there are 2 relays for messages in different directions, and that's pretty much how it works. That's, I think, what most people are here for. We've heard it a lot, that you are not going to use the product until it's available on desktop, or your friends can't use it until it's available on desktop. So I am going to show you what we built. It looks very much like our Android app because it uses exactly the same code as our Android app. So that's why we managed to build it so quickly. And obviously because we have a brilliant engineer who has been working on that. So let's say you create a profile. You can optionally create an address in the same way as it happens on Android app. And that's it. So you can connect to developers as you can do in a normal app. So it's not that different from how it works in the it's not working. So it's a live demo, by the way. So expect glitches and some malfunctions, and clearly that's not yet released. So yeah, so you can create one-time invitation link and connect. I'll just connect to my phone and we will send some first message. So it is connected. I can choose the conversation and send some message and say hello. And it also supports sending images and files, pretty much like our mobile apps. It doesn't support everything yet. It's a beta version, which we'll make available on GitHub soon. One second. Yes, but you can send images and you can receive images. You cannot send videos yet. You cannot record voice messages yet, and you cannot make phone calls. So what else do we have here? You have the same settings. You have the same settings here. You can create additional profiles. So pretty much all functionality that's supported on the mobile app is also supported on desktop. Exactly because it's almost the same app. So this is pretty much it. We'll come back to this app a bit later. And next thing I'm gonna talk about is how we host the servers, right? So many of you self-host the servers, but our instruction, our manual how to install the servers tells nothing about Tor addresses. We'll remove this omission, but you've obviously seen that our relays have dual addresses, both ClearNet or public and also Tor address. So the question is, why do you even need a Tor address if you don't use Tor, for example? Let's say if you host your relay on a ClearNet address, then users who use Tor can still connect to it. They will connect to Tor relay, and via the exit node, they will be able to connect to your server, to your relay, and send you messages. But the problem happens if the user who uses Tor enables the option in the app which says onion required. And we actually considered hiding this option or saying that it shouldn't be used or used less, but really it's not that difficult to set up Tor on your server. So if you do it, then users who use Tor will be able to connect to your server even if you don't. And as you see in the server address, there are 2 host names. ClearNet and Onion in the same address, and then depending on how the mobile app is configured or desktop app is configured, you will be able to connect to the server both with and without Tor. So now I'll hand over to our IT operations engineer. I'll be given the running commentary, and he will be setting up. Yeah, we have an installation script. You have to run it. It's in the menu, and that pretty much as simple as running our script. So once you install the server, you need to initialize it. You have to say that yes, you want to restore message queues and messaging queues and messages. Otherwise, you will not be able to restart the server. And that's it. And you already have the address of the server, and it already works. So if you try to test it now on this address, you will be able to access it. But it's not yet accessible via Tor yet. And now we will configure the Tor on this server. So yes, we use the systemd to run it as a service. And you can use log. And that's very easy way to run the server, so which we recommend you do as well. So yeah, the server starts it now. So now we will be configuring Tor on this server. We will add more comments to the video later. You can watch it. And we will update the manual on how to install the servers. So it includes the story, how to configure your server so that it can be accessible via Tor, via Onion address. But it's really simple. It's not taking that much time. It should be done in a few minutes with this installation. Usually everybody recommends not to make live demos, and we're doing not just 2 but 3 live demos. There is one more thing in the end, which will be also a live demo. So far, fingers crossed. Right. We're configuring Tor client here. So it's important that when we configure our servers, we use single hop configuration for Tor clients to make lower latency. You can use a normal hidden service if you want to hide a server on Tor, but if you really want to provide the option for other people to connect to your server without Tor, but it's also available on a public address, there is no point using standard 3 hops. It's enough to use single hop. It still improves anonymity of people who connect to relay, but it reduces the latency. That's all how all our preset servers are configured, as a single hop. I already can see some questions. I'll be coming to them later. Right. The Tor is starting now. Okay. A little bit. Good, and we have an Onion address now on our server. That's it. 5 minutes. So, okay, so what's the actual address of the server? I would like to know, so I can show you that it works, so we can test it via our brand new desktop client. Okay, there is the address. Okay, I'm going to switch back to our desktop client and add this server to the configuration. And then we can test it. Right. 1 minute. It's a live demo, inevitable technical glitches. So who would have thought that it's so difficult to copy the address from the screen? What can possibly go wrong? This is the address without onion. I also need onion. But let's test it. It should already work. And yes, it works. Good. So now we need to, okay, we can save it. And go enable Tor. And we then can add onion address to the server. It's as simple as putting it to the back and test it again. It's not as fast, naturally. Will it work? It may not work the first time because when the Tor just connects, it takes some time to establish a circuit, but it did work, right? And if I test it again, it should be much faster now. Will it? Oh, not much faster. Okay, but it did work. Great. So yes, and that's all it takes. So it took us probably 5 minutes. Obviously, we knew what we were doing to set up server. And now we will talk about the funding. Somebody already asked the question, how is SimpleX Chat funding? And there's been quite a few comments on Reddit once we announced that Village Global made a pre-seed investment last year. And the general sentiment, particularly among the users who want privacy, that VCs are evil, taking their money, will corrupt your project, whatever you do. So we clearly don't think it like that. It's a little bit more complex. So first, it's worth to consider what VC did to the technology world and what would not exist if the venture funding as a model didn't exist. So Apple, it's the company that created personal computers and smartphones and the whole idea of mobile apps. And it wouldn't exist obviously without the genius of its founders, but also without venture capital. And Netscape, again, it's a venture funded company that was then floated on a stock exchange. And thanks to Netscape, we have such things as JavaScript and cookies and SSL, and web has moved from being a platform for exchanging academic documents to the platform for applications. And it's still an open question. What would we have if not Netscape? And obviously at the time there was about 30 startups who were also building the browsers, but who also were venture funded. But it was Netscape who created all these critical ingredients for the web to become an application platform. And the last but not the least, Matrix is also, like, obviously not Matrix, but Elements or Vector. It's a venture funded company that has gone through several rounds of funding, and it created the foundation to manage the protocol, but nevertheless, it's all driven by the commercial venture funded company, and it created decentralized communications used by tens of thousands of companies today, which is great. So none of that would exist if venture funding as a model didn't exist. So, and people obviously ask why we can't do non-profit like Matrix, obviously, like forgetting that Matrix is not a purely non-profit. 3 things to remember about that. How much control a VC has depends on its terms. So in our case, Village Global gave us some money last year. It's all in a blog post. It's a very simple convertible note, which has 0 control provisions for a very small non-controlling stake in the company, and no particular influence on the company direction other than reports, and we obviously have to generate value for the shareholders, but there is no way VC that we have on board can make us do what our users wouldn't want us to do. Second, it's also very important to remember that few nonprofits are absolutely independent. They're just usually smaller. They also have a lot of influence from their sponsors who give them grants, and actually sometimes this can be much stronger influence than venture capital. And the last, we still plan to set up a nonprofit. That's an ongoing conversation with the lawyers already to hold and manage part of the intellectual property, because we believe for our business to succeed, we shouldn't be the sole provider of this network, because I, as a user, I'm not buying a network that's operated by a single provider. That's my biggest argument against Signal or WhatsApp or Telegram. It's a single provider network. And for this to be commercially viable, we believe there have to be multiple providers, multiple for-profit and non-profit entities providing the network services. It wouldn't be possible if the company holds all the intellectual property of the protocol design. So we will be setting up nonprofit this year to have a similar structure to Matrix. So yes, I can see the conversation in the group, but I'll say it on video again. So the venture capital fund that invested last year is Village Global, and we are raising more money this year because clearly building technology solutions is very expensive and it's impossible to do purely on donations. But given that we also have donations, we absolutely will be investing a proportional share to setting up nonprofit, to detaching the protocol ownership from the company. And the clear question is, okay, so if you take VC money, you want to make money at some point and you will have to return some shareholders' profit, at least you have to be promising something. And yes, absolutely. We believe that community is super supportive and users are super supportive, and we already received some donations from people who use. We will be offering an opportunity to make these small donations via the app and giving some in return. I strongly dislike Telegram model, for example, when some critically important features are crippled or reduced and only have full functionality in exchange for money. And I don't want to do it. So we will offer something of a secondary value when the product can be used without, but it still gives the recognition to the users. We will be creating a paid features, but only in cases when it's impossible to provide without payment. So for example, we recently asked a question from the community, would they use a cloud host? And it was substantial interest because we created this protocol to send files. It's very private and secure, and it's used in the application now. So it can also be used for cloud hosting. So we may offer it as a paid service. And we clearly have the same direction as Matrix by offering communication solutions for the business. And there is lots of questions from the users already who say, are you going to make group calls? Can we send long form emails, etc., etc.? So even from the existing users, there is a lot of interest to use SimpleX Chat in a business. So that can also be a way to generate revenue and to create shareholder value and not just the value for the network. We believe that commercial company and venture funded company is the only viable way to make something that really changes the world, changes how people communicate and makes communication private. We do not believe it's possible to make a purely non-profit global communication network used by all people. You can say Tor did it, but Tor is still used by a very small number of users. And that's it. So that's all about funding for now. There will be more updates early next year as we progress on funding. So we're going to talk about groups. So a standard question is, if I'm in a group, why don't I receive all messages? Is it broken or what? So to understand what happens, I will show how actually groups work. So yes, let's say we created a group of 2 people, they connected and everybody's happy, and then somebody else wants to join the group. And obviously they join through some of the members because it's a centralized group, and group instantly gets into an unhappy state because these 2 users don't see each other messages because they only send message to the second users. And to start seeing all messages, they have to connect, and then they become happy. And then let's say the 4th user joins the network. And you can see that not just this new user, but the whole network gets unhappy because now this new user only connected to 1 user. And before they start receiving messages, they have to connect to everybody else. And only when they connect to all other users, they become happy, right? And then 1 more user joins. And again, the whole network becomes unhappy because they can't see messages from this user, and this user can't see messages from the rest of the network. And again, they have to connect. And what if some of the connections break? Obviously, these 2 users will never see messages from each other. Now imagine what happens when there are 500 people in a group. It remains in a constantly unhappy state because new users constantly join, and these new users can't see messages from the majority of the network until they connect to all, and the rest of the network can't see their messages. And if you're talking about a group with 500 people, then we're talking about creating 125,000 connections like that. And don't forget they're bidirectional connections. So effectively, it's twice more connections. So what are we going to do about that? It's obviously a design limitation because we never thought people will be creating 500 people groups on SimpleX network. It was created for small, relatively stable, meaning not frequent changes in membership. So in the second version, some of the users will be hosting the group. Let's say I want to create a group and I become a group host, and whoever joins the group connects to me. And if somebody else joins, they also connect to me. And they're both happy because they don't have to connect to each other. They just have to send messages to me, and I have to forward this message. So everybody's in a happy state, and actually there are fewer connections. And now what if one of these two new users wants to help me and to host the network? They can do it. All they can do to connect to the rest of the members. Now, if somebody else joins, they just have to connect to the first host, and they already start receiving all messages. And they will connect to the second host later for redundancy, but the group never gets into an happy state, and everybody sees all messages all the time. And again, the new user joins, and they just have to connect to another host. So effectively, if a group has two hosts, that each new user only has to have two connections, but obviously hosts have lots of connections. And let's say it grows to 8 members. For these two hosts, we now have 13 connections instead of 28 that we would have with the current design. What if one of these users want to become a host? That's very easy. They just say, I'm a host, and they will have to connect to the rest of the members. It's still much fewer connections than in a fully connected group we have now. To put it in perspective, if for 500 members today we need 125,000 connections, with version 2, there will be only 1,500 connections. And even if we make 10 hosts in a group, it will be 5,000 connections instead of 125,000. So not only it reduces the traffic for members, it also reduces the traffic for the whole network, talking about sustainability and the cost, etc., etc. And for 1,000 members, the difference is even more. So right now, I don't know if we have any single 1,000 members group. I'm not in one, but it would have 500,000 connections to be fully connected with. If the group has 3 hosts, it's only 3,000 connections. It's not that much. So the good thing about this new design, it keeps all advantages of the current design. So it remains decentralized. There is no hosts and servers needed. There is no need for group-wide key agreement like this recently standardized protocol MLS. And it's a good thing because MLS has worse forward secrecy than double rigid. And it also has very high complexity. So the new design will rely only on pairwise double rigids. And it still provides repudiation, which means that you cannot prove to third party that somebody sent a message. It's another term like deniability. But it has lots of additional advantages, and it solves all the problems of the current design. So the messages are no longer delayed or fail to deliver at all, and it's much lower cost to send messages for all our members because they all have to send to hosts. There is a question I will answer in a second. And group is always now in a happy state. So new member joining doesn't make the group unhappy. And there are also additional advantages. It actually answers some of the questions. So first, pre-moderation becomes possible. So hosts can moderate the group automatically or semi-automatically, as opposed to post-moderation now. Second, it provides better transport privacy, even without introducing the second stage relays we spoke about. I'm not going to talk too much about the second stage relays right now, other than say it will solve the problem of IP privacy, and you can watch our presentation at MoneroCon. It's available on Reddit to learn more about what it is. But with this design for groups, because users only connect to hosts, they wouldn't be connecting to relays of other members. So it's better privacy already. It also leads to consistency of group states. It also provides access to past group history. Somebody asked these questions. And also member list can be concealed from anybody but hosts. So the question in the chat, do all hosts connect to all users? Yes, possibly, but obviously it's not necessary for the group to be in a stable state, and some of the hosts may fail to connect, etc., etc. So, but yes, that will likely to be a direction, although we may do something smarter than that. at some point. So this is it about groups. So groups will remain broken until we release version 2. Well, as working as they are now, we just created the group for event. It now has more than 300 members, and it works sort of, but it creates lots of traffic. But there is one more thing. So the common question that people ask already today, how do I find today? And I want to show you something which we are super excited about, because it feels like SimpleX Chat in its early days, when you could only kind of use it on the terminal and send messages via text. It feels very similar. So we built a prototype for our directory service. So it's a chatbot on the SimpleX network. I will show you the desktop app to share it, how it works. So Discovery server will have an address. Don't use it, it's not going to be online. And you can connect to it. So it tells welcome to Discovery server. You can just search. It says, for example, send politics to find groups about politics. Let's try. Like, there are no groups about politics. It tells you about that. Okay, so what do we do? So let's say we want to create a group about politics and register this on this Discovery server or directory server. Okay, what does it tell us? You have to create a group first. Let's create it. And let's call it, let's say, US politics, because why not? Right, we created a group, and it now asks us to add it to the group that's added. Oops, it asks us that it has to be admin. And you'll see in a second why it has to be admin, because it has to create a link to join the group. You know this problem, if you use the groups that you know that until the member who created the link is online, that you really can't join the group. So, and it's really bad user experience. So we want to fix that and make this directory server a source of the link. So it created the link for us, and it says, okay, now please add it to the welcome message. Okay, I will copy it, and we'll now to the welcome message of this group. Yep, that will do. The Discovery server is happy. What does it tell us? You will be notified when the group is added to the directory. It may take up to 24 hours. When it's launched, we will be doing, obviously, automatic approval with language models and such, but initially, we will be doing manual approval of all groups. So we will release it within a week, and you will be able to register your groups, but talk to us, please, because the approval will be slow, and we'll only want some limited subjects. We don't want to create a full-fledged directory of all possible groups yet. We want to experiment with that. But anyway, I'm going to approve this group now on my phone. Okay, so it is approved now, and I can now search for it. So if I go to Discovery server, well, it's the same. Some other client can connect to it. But if I now search for politics, it will find it, and that's it. That's how it works. So that's all what we have to share for now, and I'm now happy to answer any questions that you have to ask. Please send the questions to the group. I'll be looking backwards now. And so, is connecting via Tor safe? Would it be that connecting to the server in that way can let other people have access to my PC or Mac? No, absolutely not. You have to read about how safe Tor is. And running Tor on your computer doesn't give other people access to your PC or Mac. And we've only been talking about using Tor for the server at this point. So you can install Tor client on your SimpleX relay without using Tor. Okay. How do you run both Tor and ClearNet addresses? Yes, that's what I was showing a bit earlier. You have to watch the video later. A single server can have both addresses. They're just separated by comma in the relay address. And you have to install the Tor client on your relay virtual machine. Is the desktop app going to be syncing with phone app? Not initially, no. It's a hard problem to solve without compromising security, and we're absolutely not going to throw the security out of the window. We will release the desktop client as a standalone client initially, but you still have an option when you create direct conversation to use groups. And we've been using groups in for direct conversations for ages together with the terminal client. Let's say you have a friend whom you're talking a lot with. So you can create a small group just for two of you. You join from your mobile, they will join from your mobile, from their mobile, and you also join with desktop apps. So you can use the group for direct conversations. And the feature that will be added in the next version, small groups will also have delivery receipts and send receipts. Current groups don't have this feature, but you will be having it in groups, and it will be as usable as direct conversation. If there are multiple hosts in a group, how do you prevent duplication of relate messengers to users? We won't, and it's not a huge problem. So if there are multiple hosts in a group, that means that users will be receiving the same message multiple times, but their clients will be discarding duplicate messages. And there will be also some smart logic in hosts that would be doing it not in all cases, but only in some cases. So even if client receive message more than once, it won't show it more than once, so it wouldn't be a problem. Is it possible to fork SimpleX just like Signal and Mole? I'm asking about license, but I'm not saying that forking is a good idea. So it is fully open source. Relays are open source and clients are open source. And we already know at least one app that's not just pure chat app that integrated our library to use for messaging functionality, and nothing stops forking it. The license is HPL v3, which means that you can use it as long as your code is also open source for networking products. But other than that, it's not a restrictive license. And if you want to embed SimpleX Chat library into a commercial product, you have to talk to us. We haven't arrived to a pricing model for commercial licenses. We don't know what it's going to cost. Should it be free with permission? Should it be? We don't know it yet, but we're happy to talk about it on a case-by-case basis. Right, one more question is, when Groupsville 2 will be released? It's a major development. I think with a bit of luck this year, a bit more likely early next year. But I think it will be not one big bang release, but maybe some series of improvements that we still don't know yet. Is it going to be seamless transitions from the current groups to version 2, or if it will require migrating your membership to the new design? This is to be decided. Might there be possibility of managing app functions per managed user through an MDM interface, or does the framework does not let itself that possibility? So we're talking about like using in a business when users are managed via MDM. I don't know. I think you certainly can install the app via MDM. We didn't do anything for any functionality to develop MDM, even though we say that we're considering making a business, some business communications product. We didn't do it yet, but I'm very happy to talk about it and to understand what's needed to make it usable. Next question, why are invite links always linked to your server? Could we not have our own invite links? I assume you're referring to the link having SimpleX Chat domain in them. If that's so, then the app itself never connects to the server, and you can replace SimpleX Chat domain with SimpleX:/. That will work. Or you can replace our domain with any domain you fancy, and the server doesn't even have to exist, because this is just namespace. And the only reason we generate links with SimpleX Chat domain to simplify onboarding new users. If they open this link, it will open the page and it will show the QR code. It will tell them to install the app, but the app itself doesn't use our site. You can copy this page, you can host it on your server and replace the domain with whatever you fancy, and it will work. So probably we will allow to generate SimpleX links as well, but we didn't think that much about it, how it will work in the app. why not leaving the group topics free for people to create whatever they want? It's a very interesting question about the freedom of speech, right? So we, as a provider of the app and service, are responsible for the content that user can discover via the app. You can host your own directory service, and you can have whatever groups you want there, and nobody will know. And as software creators, we are not responsible for what you do with our software. But as a service provider, we're certainly responsible for the content that we make available via our app. So we do not want to compromise the network, and we don't want to create legal risks and legal responsibility for us by allowing all topics and by making app not acceptable for mass market audience, because it will compromise the future of the network. So we'll certainly be approaching subjects carefully. You can create groups on any subjects, nobody can stop you that. But if we host the discovery servers, this is our service, we're responsible for it. We don't owe anybody to allow all topics there. And you can use another discovery service for the app. We don't limit it. So let's say you have an app, you can connect to another discovery service and find other groups, right? But if it's not part of the app, then it can host any content, right? But if it is part of the app, then we are to some extent responsible for the content discoverable via the app. And the more it grows, the more legal responsibility will be bearing. So that's the consideration we must be aware of. Will stickers and interactions same or similar to Signal will be soon? Is it on a roadmap? It is on a roadmap. You can use stickers today via third-party keyboards, whether it's a good idea or not. There's clearly some privacy and security trade-offs with using things like Giphy. We don't see it as a huge priority right now, but probably next year we will do something about it. Can I still use my usual VPN when I have Orbit activated to use SimpleX? You can use Orbit as SOX proxy, and it's better to use Orbit as SOX proxy for SimpleX. And I think it will continue working as a VPN in parallel. Can other host discovery bots too? Absolutely, yes. It's just a SimpleX Chat bot. You can take the code once it's released from our repository and run it. We are really committed to avoiding creating any point of centralization in the network. And discovery service is included in this avoidance. It doesn't mean that in the app that we release and maintain and legally responsible, we should allow all content in our discovery service, but you can host your own and people can use your discovery service. So if they find your discovery service online, they can find their whatever content that you want to allow there. And that's fine. It's almost like a search. We see our software akin to web browser, right? And web browser is not responsible for the content. But if we pre-install some content in a web browser, then suddenly it becomes responsible. So there's a very fine line here. Will you implement red receipts one day? It's an interesting question. There is a lot of, it's a very polarizing subject for communities. We have similar number of requests to implement them and to please don't implement them, because to some people it's convenience, to some other people it's stress. So given that our resources are very limited, we're a super small team, we don't see red receipts as priorities right now, which doesn't mean we'll never implement them. I think it may happen next year. What I really would like to understand, and it actually would be really helpful to have community help, is why do you want them? What problems they solve, right? What scenarios are they helpful? Because just we want to know when people read our messages is not problem, right? It's a solution to some other problem. So it would be good to know what problems read receipts solve for you. We will be doing user survey soon, and you certainly should include red receipt or any other most important feature if that's what you want. Thank you so much for being here, and that's a lot of support from you. Thank you so much, and have a good evening or day.